Do you think there's something to those, near-death experiences that, gave a more, perspective to life? Because once you experience something like that, a deadline for a story or a deadline for a homework, they just don't have the same meaning.
Right.
Do you think that added
They don't
something to
produce the same level of anxiety
Right.
meeting the deadline. Life goes on, and you begin to recognize that. And being perfect no longer is that important. You can be imperfect and live with your imperfections. I have plenty of imperfections. I just live with them. They upset you, I'm sorry. I just live with them myself. Yeah. So you take a more relaxed attitude toward life.
But how can you give this perspective to younger people, students?
I don't know how
having that.
if I could bottle it and distribute it in pill form or liquid form, I'd do so. I'd be a very rich man. I don't know how you do it without time and experience. And some knowledge, somebody giving you information. It's one of the things that I remember early in my career. Watching fellow journalists, I was the youngest person in the newsroom. These other people had been out that I was working with or sitting next to had been out at other newspapers for years before they got to the Washington Post. And they had to come with a clip file, 5 or 6, 7 years of work before they were even considered. I didn't have anything to show. A city editor took a chance on me, and that was it. One of the things that I heard, I think it was hearsay to me, but it was Ben Bradley, the executive editor who eventually became the executive editor of the Washington Post. At this time, in the 60s, he was the managing editor. And he told someone who told me, he said, you're not going to get very far in this industry, journalism, unless you're willing to take risk. If you're going to play it safe, then you're going to probably end up doing obituaries at night on weekends, and that's when the paper is telling you to leave. But if you take risk, and you take risks to get the big story, that's what you have to be prepared to do. And I took that seriously. I took risk in terms of going after stories that I didn't know I was going to be successful on. And a number of times I flopped. I thought there was a story there, and I went after it. My editors gave me the time to work on it, and I came up with those stories. And that was embarrassing, but I was willing to I didn't stop taking risks. I continued to take risks. And most of the risks panned out, or I became more experienced and willing to understand that I had the elements of the story at the beginning, and now I had to get the meat of the story. Yeah. Like when I did the adolescent childbearing series, I knew I approached 13 families. That was intentional, many families. And after a couple of months, I dropped 7 families from the project because it was just too unwieldy. And there were 11 children each of 2 families in this 13 families. So I kept one of the families with 11 children and discarded one of the families with 11 children. But I knew from my access and the kinds of information I was getting from these people that this was going to be a tremendous immersion storytelling piece when I sat down to write it. And I just knew it was going to be a blockbuster. And it was. It angered a lot of people. A lot of people said it was about time that I wrote this truth. So it had a mixed reception, but that was fine with me, as long as the truth was out there in print for people to read. Because when I started journalism, I thought I could right all the wrongs in the world and make everything great. And then after a while, I realized that that was not going to happen. So then I really reduced my goals to just informing the public. And that's part of humility. The only thing I'm doing is informing the public. Whether they want to accept it as truth or not is their choice. But at least I've informed them.
When you were an active journalist at the Washington Post, did you have an optimistic view